Greetings, friends. This is Chris Batts, your host of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. In today's episode, I spoke with an alternative career coach for attorneys. Her story started in BigLaw, but fate had her land in the marketing department of a big consumer brand. We discussed how attorneys can do the same and transition with their careers and much more. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast and leave a review on iTunes. We interview corporate defense, law firm leaders, partners, general counsel, and legal consultants. You are listening to episode 44 of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast.
Broadcasting from Kansas City, this is the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. In each episode, you'll receive actionable ideas and hear personal leadership stories of both men and women serving as leaders and executives in the legal industry. Enjoy a front row seat as Chris Batts speaks with general counsel, legal consultants, and law firm leaders and law partners at the top corporate defense law firms from around the United States.
Welcome to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Batts with the Lion Group. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Cheryl Heisler, president and founder of Lawternatives. Since 1988, Cheryl has assisted attorneys at all stages of their career with individualized career consulting, exploring alternative career paths. Her journey began with a law degree from Northwestern University School of Law and 3 years as a corporate lawyer for Catton Muchin in Chicago. But fate had her leave the practice of law to pursue a career in brand management with Kraft. There, she contributed to the marketing efforts of brands such as Parquet Margarine and Kraft Real Mayonnaise. I should also add that Cheryl sits on the American Bar Association's Career Committee and moonlights as a creator of signature cocktails for private events and venues under her business name, Mixed Metapours. Welcome, Cheryl, to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me. It's good to talk to you. Last time we spoke, we had a program coming up, if I remember, and it, as with so many other things, has been canceled due to the spread of this rotten coronavirus. So I'm happy to be reconnecting with you on a personal and professional level.
It's great to connect with you again. I know we were going to try to do that program in Chicago with the ACC Annual Summit, and I know they've postponed that till April 2021. And that seems to be the trend that's happening for lots of things in business and personal life tends to be delayed by this historic and unprecedented COVID-19 coronavirus. So, Cheryl, for you, how has coronavirus affected you and those around you right now?
Well, instead of being empty nesters, my husband and I now have 4 adult children living back here in the house with us. I would say that's one thing that has changed. But we're doing well. We're getting along. And boy, I've got, between my kids and their significant others, we've got some great cooks in this house. The kitchen is getting a workout, but I'm happy for it. I'm happy everybody's well. As you remember, the first time we met, Chris, was actually in Kansas City when I was visiting my grown son and wife and grandson out there. So I can't see them except over the line of FaceTime, but they're doing well too, so I'm very lucky. How about you?
The same. It's been good and challenging. There's a lot of ways that we've really enjoyed the intentionality that this has created for our family. Definitely tensions in our home. I've got a wild little 2-year-old, 3-year-old man who has put everyone on edge because we don't have the nanny in, and my 11-year-old daughter doesn't want anything to do with them. And so it's been challenging for my wife and I, who both work from home at this moment. So COVID-19 has definitely changed our lives dramatically. And I'd like to hear from you, just how is it affecting even maybe some ways that you're relating to attorneys right now and professionals?
Well, you cannot deny that this has impacted all of us, the way we live, the way we work. And with regard to my clients who are exploring career change, I find a couple of major differences. One is there are people who want to move careers, but they're just happy to have a career to go to. And so some of those folks have put their career exploration on hold. I've heard from other people who didn't think they were going to be looking for a change, but then they've either been furloughed or laid off. And so they're forced to think about what else they can do with their law degree. So, like so many other things that are impacted by this very unexpected and very new situation, people find themselves in different places. And one of the things I tell everybody is, hey, wherever you are right now, emotionally, mentally, it's okay. We got to deal with you where you're at. And if you're feeling super depressed, let's get you back to a neutral place, to a plateau. If you're feeling excited about change, wonderful. We can run with that. If you're feeling tentative, like most of us, you're going to have some good days and some not such good days, and that's okay too. We've got to roll with the punches here, but not lose sight of the fact that there are opportunities and there is a career chance and career future plans for all of us. Don't stop looking or thinking just because right now, today, things are looking a little bit uncertain.
With them looking, have they noticed just a dramatic drop-off for hiring?
So it's kind of crazy. I heard from one client just before you and I got online who said, hey, I want to stop our work together. I am so busy with what's going on remotely and some new clients that our firm has picked up that I have to put my career assessment on hold. So that's surprising. But if you're working in certain areas, you're swamped. If you're working, let's say, in real estate and retail, and the tenants have stopped paying their bills because they're not doing any business, you're busy. It may not be great business, maybe collection business, but you're busy. There are other areas, though, where not much is going on at all. So that's true in any market. There's always going to be ups and downs. This is a tough time. And I think we don't know the ripples yet, Chris.
Yeah.
That's one of the parts of the uncertainty. Sometimes you can predict, well, this is happening, therefore that is happening. Right now, for instance, in the logistics business, and I know this because one of the folks that's in my home is in that area, there's a lot going on with distribution, but there's also a lot of stuff that can't be distributed, right? So you hear the stories about farmers who can't move their product because they can't get it from the farm to the processing plants, or the processing plants are closed and they're not taking deliveries. So we're not quite sure what's changing here, but we know things are in flux.
And I know, so today is May 1st. And so I know a number of the governors in cities and states are going to start lifting bans and slowly allowing people to kind of commingle. It is going to be very interesting to see the experiment of kind of returning back potentially. What's going on in Chicago?
Chicago is still locked down. If Governor Pritzker has his way, it'll be at least till the end of May, possibly beyond. There have been some legal challenges to that. I think people here are still pretty scared. And if you look at the national numbers, it seems to me more people want to stay locked down than, go out and risk it. But without even looking at the general public, I like to focus on what individuals should be thinking about now. And when it comes to career change, I'm convinced that the same steps that you would take in exploring your alternatives in good times are the same steps you want to work through now, even under this stress, but you want to just take things a little bit more slowly. Whereas it would take, you'd say jump into some career direction and move more quickly to a networking or resourcing stage. I think now, under the social distancing and the difficulty sometimes in reaching out to people, you still need to spend the time thinking and doing secondary research from home on your computer, and we can talk about where that fits into the whole career change process. But you still need to work through the tried and true steps. I wouldn't abandon a process that works just because the times have changed.
That brings up a very good point. Let's talk about some of those steps that if people are looking right now, what they could be doing with this, I don't know if it's downtime or just being at home versus meeting with folks.
Right. I know. I have to be careful with that too, because some people are crazier than ever with work and children and baking and trying to stay sane. But since I've been doing this, and it's been quite a while, I've always believed that there are 4 steps to the career transition process, right? There's a self-assessment step, maybe the hardest of all. And look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I? What do I want? What do I want now? Why do I want it? Why is it fulfilling? What will I want to leave as my legacy? Those kinds of very introspective questions can certainly be done now while you're, for lack of a better term, navel-gazing and thinking about what you want to do. Ask yourself those questions. And if you don't have a friend to have a beer with, have a virtual drink while you talk through these things, or take a paper and a pencil and write down pros and cons. What do I like about what I'm doing? What don't I like? I always think that's where you've got to start, because otherwise you're just running away from something and not moving towards another career or another position. So that's the first thing. And for sure, the self-assessment can be done anytime, anywhere. You don't need anybody else to be within 6 feet of you to do that, right? But then the second step is a market assessment. What kinds of markets and industries will value the core pieces that you identified for yourself? The things that you want to do, the things that you want to leave behind after you're done working, the kinds of day-to-day and long-term goals that you want to set for yourself. What markets will value those? That piece can also, much of it can be done from home, from behind the computer, through reading and finding interesting inspiration in articles online. When you get to the last two steps, the networking and then ultimately the sales and marketing of you, I think that gets a little bit harder in this current environment. Mm-hmm. But even so, if you've done the right steps first and you did what you needed to do with a self-assessment and market assessment, you're going to be well on your way to the resourcing, the networking, and the selling once things start to open up, as you mentioned, which hopefully will be sooner, even if it's in small chunks, than later.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, thank you for sharing those 4 steps. Hi, friends. This is Chris Batts. Over the next month or two, we're going to do a listener show. I'll consider doing these shows every 3 to 6 months, depending on your participation, the number and kind of questions you submit. Please submit your questions, and I'll spend some time reading through them and commenting. I have 2 easy ways for you to submit your questions. Number 1, you'll receive a link when you text the phrase LFL Podcast to the number 44222. That's LFL PODCAST, or by clicking the Give Feedback link in the show notes on your device. Please take a moment and do this now. I look forward to your questions. Thank you, everyone. And now back to the show. Let's actually jump into some of your history, Cheryl. Let's talk about you becoming a lawyer. Was that something you thought you were going to do before you went to college, or you discovered while you're in college?
Oh, you really want to go there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Like a lot of my clients, I never really thought about it. I wanted to be in public relations and communications because I had an aunt who did that, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I majored in communications at University of Illinois and did well. And then my dad, God bless him, said, you're smart. Why don't you do something and get a professional degree? And then, of course, we ruled out medicine because I didn't like the sight of blood. Mm-hmm. And we ruled out accounting because, I add up a list of numbers and get 3 different answers. And so it was law by default. And I did not love law school. I mean, I liked my experience at Northwestern. I liked the things that I got involved in. I loved my summer associate positions, which is how I ultimately ended up working in BigLaw. But I think I knew kind of early on it wasn't a great fit. The best way I know that it wasn't right for me is I got tongue-tied. And since I was a little kid, I could talk to anybody about anything. And I would go into a partner's office with this work I had just researched and knew backwards and forwards, and I couldn't put it together in a phrase. I couldn't sound coherent. And I thought, what's wrong with me? I got so dumb. And I don't think it was so much a lack of smarts as it was a lack of comfort with what I was working with and talking about. So anyway, when I left the firm, it was on great terms, but it wasn't for another law practice. I knew I needed something different.
When you made that transition from Catton, let's just talk a little bit about who inspired you, or how did that door open up at landing a role at Kraft?
It's another great story. My husband was in New York on business. He tripped across a little ice cream dip shop called Dimitri's Cafe, and that name sticks with me for a reason, because the next time we were in New York, we went there, and the ice cream was so good, I said to Dimitri, whose ice cream is this? This is a long time ago. And he says, a couple of guys from Vermont, Ben somebody and Jerry somebody. And I said, I love this ice cream. I have to have it in Chicago. So I'll be darned if I wasn't back in Chicago trying to get hold of Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's. And I don't know if, Chris, I might have told you this story, but I'll repeat it for your audience. I was in my office at Catton, and I was on a phone call with a partner, and he was talking about how he woke up that morning while he was shaving and thinking about how to save a client $20,000 in taxes. And I remember thinking, I woke up this morning thinking about ice cream. And as soon as that thought popped into my mind, my secretary buzzed through. Again, this is dating myself, but we used to have secretaries, right? And she said, I have a Ben Cohen online too.
Oh, my goodness.
And I remember saying to the partner, I'll call you back. And then we had a chance to actually meet with Ben and Jerry and talk about what if we could somehow open up a flagship store in the Midwest and then franchise from that flagship store and use it as a distribution point? And we had a couple of great meetings with them. Ultimately, as much as they were hippies, they were really smart business guys. And they said, you guys are really nice people. You don't know enough about ice cream distribution, and it's not going to happen, but thanks so much. And here's a lot of free coupons. And I had a window open up for me, which is like, hey, this food marketing stuff could be really fun. I like food. I didn't feel tongue-tied, even though I wasn't talking about something I had any knowledge of except the end product, right, the eating of it. And that's what led me to look into jobs in marketing, and that was the first step toward getting a job in brand management with Kraft Foods.
So fascinating. Did you ever stay in touch with Ben & Jerry?
After they sold to Haagen-Dazs, I was a little intimidated, but for years we did. And whenever they would come to do events, we'd, go visit with them and taste the newest flavors. And we even were able to, when they were still a little company, we were able to get some of the Ben & Jerry stock. Oh. And it's crazy, right? They say invest in things you know. It was probably the best stock buy my husband and I ever did. It was a small amount, but the return was fabulous.
That's awesome. That's so fun.
I think I also helped the stock price go up because we ate a lot of ice cream in those days.
That's excellent. I have to ask, what's your favorite flavor?
Oh, boy. I'd say as a family, we go through more New York Super Fudge Chunk than anything else. But I'd be hard-pressed to turn down any of theirs. How about you? Are you a Ben & Jerry's fan?
No, and we're kind of almost a no-sugar home. There are different types of ice creams we've had in our house. I'd have to say, though, I think it's their cheesecake one that they make is probably one of my all-time favorites.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. So it's so fascinating. And I love that story because, again, it just feeds to this wonderful imagery of food, leaving law and going into a career of marketing. How did the door open at Kraft? And were you still at Catton before this happened?
Oh, yes. In fact, I vividly remember after announcing that I was going to be leaving for marketing, one by one, the other associates would knock on my door and come in, and they said, "You got out. Can you help me?" Really, that was when the idea for Lawternatives was born, even though I didn't spend several years at Kraft in marketing. But what happened was I had put together a marketing plan for Ben & Jerry's, and I had some help from a friend of mine who was in marketing, and I winged it, but it was exciting and it was fun, and I had that marketing plan available to show not only to friends of mine in the business world with whom I was networking, but also to business recruiters. And there was one business recruiter who said, I don't know why I'm going to do this, but I'll take a gamble on you. I have connections at Kraft and Nabisco, both consumer packaged goods companies in Chicago, and I'm going to shop your resume around. Now, I know recruiters don't usually do that, and I was very lucky, but I did have the undergraduate degree in advertising, and I did have the smarts verified by having a JD, and I did have the gift of gab, and I did have this marketing plan, which showed at least a passion for, if not a technical education in marketing. And I got a chance to interview at Kraft, having, this is a very important step, done a lot of networking with people in the consumer packaged goods marketing world. So I knew what they were looking for. I knew what to say. I knew how to spin my legal and business undergraduate backgrounds. And I had somebody said, hey, you're smart enough to be a lawyer. I think you're probably smart enough to learn this stuff. We'll take a flyer. And they hired me.
Wow. Like, did you know you were going to land a job there, or what did it feel like getting the offer and accepting?
I was thrilled. I was scared. There comes a point in every lawyer-changing career's lifetime where you say, what am I giving up? Am I going to miss this? For all of its frustrations, law is a profession respected by most people in the world. It's a door opener. I even remember after taking the job, for the first few months I was there, when people said, what do you do? I said, I used to be a practicing attorney, but now I'm working in marketing for Kraft. Because I needed that confidence, that pat on the back that I hadn't lost whatever it was that being a lawyer meant. Of course, after a few months when I was having a whole lot more fun at Kraft and doing things that were in the public eye that people had heard about with products people knew about and had seen on their tables and in their fridges for years, I didn't need the lawyer part anymore.
Right. I noticed that you were at Kraft for what, a year and a half, 2 years?
Couple years, a little over 2 years.
So tell me, why leave?
I had my first kid, and I was looking for something where I could have a little more flexibility, coupled with the fact that I really was enjoying Parquet Margarine was my starting position. Then I was promoted to work on Kraft Real Mayonnaise. And while I was out on maternity leave, they were going to move me to Kraft Miracle Whip.
Okay.
And that is the crown jewel of Kraft. At least it was then. That's what they sold the most of. That's where they made the most profit on. And I thought, wow, I like working with small brands. I like being able to come up with new ideas. If they move me to Miracle Whip, I'm going to have to do the same thing the same way because nobody will take a chance with it. And I guess I'm a risk taker in some ways, at least in calculated risks. So I thought now would be a good time for me to find something new and also not have to go back to work doing something that I didn't think was going to be as fun and as creative. As it happened, right before I went on maternity leave, an article had come out in the American Bar Association Journal called The Best and the Brightest, Bored and Burned Out. And I was profiled along with another handful of lawyers who at that time were the first generation of people talking openly about leaving the law. And even while I was still at Kraft, some folks had started to call me and said, can you help me? Can you advise me? Remember I talked about that back at Kent & Mushin where lawyers were knocking on my door saying, can you help me? So it just dawned on me, what if I give this a flyer? I'll set up a consulting business where I have more flexibility with a new child, and I can help other lawyers move on, and it's fun and it's creative, and, nothing ventured, nothing gained. My husband came up with this great name for the company, Lawternatives, and right after I was done with maternity leave, I said, thanks, guys, I'm not coming back. And so that was how Kraft turned into Lawternatives, and I haven't looked back since. I have loved this career.
I love that story, and I love your passion for things to be fun, creative, and for you to take risks. I know that's got to be helpful when you work with clients. Hi, listeners. This is Chris Batts, legal recruiter and owner of the Lion Group. My team and I place legal and compliance talent around the United States and are known for our level of communication, speed, and strong track record. If you're an employer hiring your first attorney or first general counsel or adding talent to your corporate legal department or compliance team, we should talk. Also, if you're a corporate defense law partner or group wondering about your options for a lateral move, we should also talk. Every aspect of our process is confidential, fast, and thorough. Contact us by going to our website, findthelions.com, or you can text the word headhunter to the number 44222, and then complete the web form and we'll follow up with you shortly. Now back to the show. Let's talk about clients. Let's talk about ideal clients for you. Who have you helped? Let's get into some of the examples of some things you've done for them.
So my clients are extremely varied. I've started with people who are just starting law school all the way to senior partners and judges. So there's no one demographic of people who come interested in career change. But what makes a good client is somebody who's open and curious. They don't come in telling me all the reasons they can't do something. They're open to hearing perhaps why they can. They're open to hearing a different way to look at things. Even if they're not self-aware to begin with, they're open to it. So that when we start with the self-assessment component, they want to learn. They want to see more into that window of what makes them tick professionally and personally, too. That's a big part of it. My best clients are super industrious. They're going to run down every idea, even if it means, and I don't mean knock it down, I mean run it down to the nth degree to see if there's something there. Because every idea that we pursue, even if it means at the end it's not really right, we learn something from that. So those kinds of clients who say, tell me, let me explore with you, help me understand, help me focus, that's great fun. And where they go, that's as diverse and varied as the clients themselves. I've had lawyers go certainly into other kinds of law practice. Maybe they've gone from litigation to corporate work, or they've gone from private practice to in-house. But that's like running a gamut from A to C. I've had lawyers go into business, into the arts, into education, into the hospitality industry, into the airplane industry, into the equine industry. I think you name it, and I've probably had somebody who's tried to do that. It's wild, and yet it's not surprising. Law attracts people from so many different backgrounds. That's part of the reason you get there when you maybe shouldn't have. But you can use that background if you really enjoy it, if it's a passion, to then redirect how you use your legal skills and your special talents.
That's excellent. Cheryl, do you have any specific examples of whether it's a partner, a judge, or even someone who's practicing law and they went in a direction that gives people an example? I know you kind of spoke high level about the different industries.
Oh, one of my favorite stories. There was a guy, and he and I are still connected through LinkedIn, and we talk about once or twice a year. Great guy. I don't want to use his name, but I'll call him A. A always had a passion for sports, in particular golf. And while he was working as a litigator and very frustrated with it, he started to, try to let off steam by going golfing. And then he realized that while he was at the golf course, he was meeting interesting people, and he started spending more time around there, and then realized that one of the skills he'd picked up as a litigator was the ability to write. So he started writing some side articles for small golf publications, and he was good. And his writing abilities caught the attention of other more well-known golf publications, and he started writing for those. And then he said, I don't have to practice law. I can write. And I think he took a part-time job doing something in legal publishing just to sort of pay the bills, but was writing about golf. And that led to a full-time editor position at a golf publication.
Oh, wow.
And that then combined with his background, he'd done some theater, and he was a very gregarious, outgoing kind of person, led to a position in golf TV coverage, which then led to a position in PR for golf companies. And he does all kinds of different media and PR and voiceover and things now, not just in the golf industry. His whole career has rotated, and now he is a communicator. I guess lawyers are communicators too, but now he's communicating on things he really loves to talk about. So I always think that's just a great story and just a very satisfying one to go back to and to tell. But I'll tell you, success can be defined in a lot of ways. I also had a client who was a partner at a law firm and was miserable. And what it turned out as we got deeper into that self-assessment component was she was miserable because she felt guilty. She was a single mom. Her daughter was a junior in high school, and she just couldn't stand the idea that her daughter was going to go off to school, and she had spent so much time practicing. So in that case, the solution wasn't to get out of the law. It was to take a sabbatical and spend that last year at home with her daughter. And then when her daughter went off to college, she went back to work happy as a clam, because it wasn't that the law was a bad fit. It was at that moment in her life her head needed to be someplace else.
And it's excellent to have someone like you to give them that permission.
That's a nice way to put it. I guess I give them permission, but I also help them think through risks and rewards, right? Sometimes people will look to me to say, hey, I got another job just like my other job, and it pays $15,000 more. Should I take it? And I'll say, let's go back to what you're looking for. And it's not a fit. Yes, it may be more money, and yes, that may give you certain opportunities or freedoms you didn't have before. But if we're really evaluating that on career satisfaction, it's not going to get you any further. So I guess it's permission to move and sometimes permission not to move.
Cheryl, let's talk about what a client should expect when working with you.
I tell my clients that we're going to work through this process, basically the 4 steps that I outlined earlier, and that it'll probably take us someplace between 4 and 6 sessions to get through the work. With that's with them doing homework in between the sessions. How long the actual search will last, of course, it depends on how far afield they're going from the law, how much effort they're putting in, what's happening in the market. Pandemics will probably slow things down a little bit. But what they can expect is that we're going to work together as a team, going through those 4 steps, reviewing what their findings are, tweaking their findings, tweaking their networking abilities, tweaking their marketing materials, and I'm in their corner. I get such a thrill when I hear of the successes that my clients have. I feel like I'm right in there with them.
And are you with them all the way to the end? Is that the idea, to kind of coach them until they find what they're looking for?
It can be. Sometimes it's beyond that. I've had clients who've made one move, and then a couple of years later, they'll call me back and say, hey, this was great. Now I have the confidence to try to move from here. So sometimes it continues on into second and third career jumps. sometimes clients say, I was just stuck at the beginning, Cheryl. Now I got it, and I'm going to take it on my own. And that's okay, too. If I can empower you to get off that stuck place and you don't need me anymore, my feelings aren't hurt. I'm here for you. I'm in your back corner if you need to call me up again.
Cheryl, and you may not know the answer to this, but I just want to ask, are you noticing any trends that are happening among lawyers wanting to get a career outside of law?
Well, one of the trends I've noticed is that this desire for alternatives is starting earlier and earlier. I consult with law schools, and I go out there and I will do usually some kind of a keynote speech about all the different things you can do and how to make those moves. And then I'll have one-on-ones with students who want to see me while I'm on campus. And it shocks me, I'll have days that are fully scheduled with people who say, I know I'm in law school, but I don't want to do this. And it's a tribute to the profession and I guess the information that's out there, that people understand that it's okay and you can use your career. And I don't like the feel of alternative careers as being a stepchild to practicing law. It's another very valuable, smart way to use your legal skills and tie it to your own personal interests. So instead of thinking of this as, something I can do only after I can no longer practice law, or I'm disbarred, or I've been fired, think of it as a fully fledged option when you're thinking about what else you can do with your career. Chris, you and I have talked about that. There are other paths to the C-suite besides just going up the legal chain. How great is it for somebody with a law background to also be in operations, HR, financial, because you have all the abilities plus that legal training and the legal strategy and the legal thinking and the understanding of fiduciary duty. To me, it just makes sense. It's not even a hard sell.
Cheryl, what advice would you give to somebody who is really wrestling through the journey of they got the degree, they're working long hours, maybe they're at a big law firm or they're at another kind of firm, and they're hearing this now, and you're kind of almost confirming what they've been wondering for years. What advice would you have for them?
Not to shove or shovel their feelings under the rug. It's just like we started off with when we talked about, hey, in these crazy times, whatever you feel is okay. It's just what you do with it. I think that's true in careers too. If you're listening to yourself, if you're self-aware, if you're doing this self-assessment and you realize you're really unhappy, let's understand what are the elements that are working and what are the elements that aren't. And you can change those things. You can continue to do well and to put food on your table and to get up and go to work, but you can be happy and you can be fulfilled. And if you're feeling very beaten down where you're practicing, you've got the skills and the smarts to identify and make career change happen.
Cheryl, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably the easiest thing is to just reach out. I've got a website, www.lawternatives.com. Or you can email me, cheisler@lawternatives.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Questions, I'm on LinkedIn. Just reach out and say hi and say, hey, I was listening to this podcast and I've got some questions for you, and let's talk.
And so for my listeners, just as a reminder, everything we talk about today, even links and kind of redirecting you, there will be links in our podcast show notes and on our webpage that you'll be able to follow up with Cheryl as well. Cheryl, let's pivot. I want to talk about something else that you do that I think is very fun. It was brought up earlier at the beginning of the intro, that you have another passion and a focus.
I know where this is going.
In the world of mixed cocktails. And can you just share with my audience your journey with Mixed Metapours, your business, in crafting cocktails for private events and venues?
So this is another funny story. First of all, I have to say, once you start changing careers, it gets a little bit addicting. So from law to marketing, from marketing to career coaching and consulting, even under the umbrella of career consulting, I've done things like outplacement and speaking and article writing. And, occasionally if I can make a match with somebody, I've even dabbled in the recruiting space. But you begin to realize that skills are transferable. So when my eldest son, graduated from college and was looking for a job in the sports industry, he decided that he wanted a mixology or bartending license to fall back on, just in case. And so we signed up for a class together. And then, of course, he got a job in D.C. at the time. But I thought still, I like to have a drink once in a while. It'd be fun to go and learn about it. No idea I was going to do anything with it, because I really didn't see myself as working till 2 in the morning and closing up at a bar. I have a family. I have a husband. I kind of like to be in bed by 11:30. But it was so much fun, and I fell into it. I loved the mixing. I loved the talking to clients. It's sort of, I guess it's not so different from career consulting. You're listening to people and you're coming up with a recommendation, right? Either it's a path for going forward, or in the case of a cocktail, it's coming up with the right drink to match the theme, the venue, the colors. I've had corporations hire me to make a drink in their corporate colors. Or I've done wedding showers where we've done a his, a hers, and a theirs, right? So he makes a drink for her, she makes a drink for him, and they make one for each other.
That's awesome.
So it's creating in a sort of liquid space, and it's just fun, and it's a break. I like to know and learn about different spirits, and I love when they come together. There's a theater in my town that's actually been written up by the Wall Street Journal as one of the best local theater troupes around, and they're cocktail consultants, and we do new drinks, creative cocktails and mocktails for each new show. So I get to read the play, think about the play, think about the characters, and sort of put an intellectual spin on what drink we're going to be selling at the bar.
That's so fun.
It's great fun. It's an outlet, and I can be a guinea pig for my own creations.
That's so fun. So the next question I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite cocktails and preferred liqueur?
Okay, so I've got an answer for that, which is, and it's very honest. I say my drinks are like my children. I love them all, but favorite them at different times. So what we've been drinking a lot of during the pandemic is, because it's starting to get nice in Chicago, we're doing variations on gin and tonics.
Nice.
So it's, until I run out, it's different gins coupled with different fancy tonics. But my new favorite spin is I made Campari ice cubes. You take Campari and you cut it with water, because straight Campari won't freeze. Right. Maybe about 1/3 Campari, 2/3 water, and you get these giant shaped ice cubes, either squares or rounds, and you freeze them so you've got this gorgeous pink hue, which gives off, as it melts, little bits of the Campari bitters, so you can make a Negroni, or even just drop one in and pour juice or iced tea over it if you don't want something too boozy. White wine. That's my current go-to. That's my current favorite child. But, wintertime, it's dark spirits. Autumn, it's a lot of things with ciders. Chris, you like to play around with this stuff, too. You're no novice when it comes to these.
I'm a whiskey guy through and through, so I'm always looking for the next bourbon, or I'm a big fan of Kansas City's Rieger whiskey. But
good stuff.
Yeah, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I tend to lean in that direction. But my goodness.
Literally an old-fashioned guy? Is that your go-to cocktail?
Yes, it is. It is.
Listen, it doesn't matter what you do on the side. Having hobbies, having something else to stimulate your brain, having something else to read and know about, having something else to talk about.
Yes.
One of the things that I think people forget, even in an interview setting, it's nice to be interesting in more than one area. You could be the top person on bio or Bitcoin, but it's also nice to be the guy that somebody would want to go out and have a lunch or a coffee or a cocktail with. And that usually means talking about the other things that round you out, that make you a more interesting person. So I guess I'm a big fan of hobbies generally. And whether it's knitting or golfing or music or cocktailing, it just makes for a more interesting person and a more interesting interaction. And you know what? Like it or not, even with this world of technology, we're all connected.
We are.
I think people in this pandemic are missing that connection, which is why most Friday nights or Friday afternoons I'm doing Zoom happy hours from many of my clients who are no longer having people in the house. So we're finding a way to drink together. And I like the idea of connecting, whether it's people to people or people to cocktails or people to jobs that they're happy with. I think we're all more fulfilled when we're in a good place. And if I can help anybody do that, I think I'm on my right track.
I think you are too. Well, let's pivot to some more personal topics. So, again, with my podcast show, I love to include more of the humanity and not just professional development in this. So, as far as family is concerned, you mentioned you have 4 kids, correct?
I have 3 kids,
Okay.
but now they each have a significant other. So in some ways, we could be talking about 6 and a grandbaby.
And
they're not all living with us, so I still have a little bit of sanity left.
what are you guys finding fun things to do in the house during Corona together?
Everybody likes to cook. I will add the caveat that not everybody likes to clean, which is a bone of contention. But we have had some of the best meals around here. We do different ethnic foods. We do breads. We do baked goods. We've had a halva and homemade pretzels and focaccia and shakshuka and rolled zucchini lasagna and stir fries. Tonight, my daughter, who spent a semester in Argentina, is making empanadas. So, like I say, we cannot complain about the eating.
That is so
But
fun.
we also like to share it together and sit down. The one thing we have been doing together is we try really hard to have dinner together. Everybody goes off to their own corner and hooks up their own Wi-Fi during the day. But then we get together and talk about, and that's kind of cool, right? That's an old-fashioned throwback. That, first of all, they wouldn't be living here but for the pandemic. They all had their own apartments. But we're reconnecting that way, and we're playing Scrabble, and we're watching old movies, and we're trying to make lemonade here out of lemons.
That's awesome. Talk to me about reading. We always address reading on my podcast. What are you reading? What books do you recommend? Do you have any recommendations for my listeners?
Well, again, under the heading of be compassionate with yourself, I found a lot of people, even good readers, are having a hard time concentrating now. So I'd say whatever you do pick up to read, make sure it's something that you're interested in. Don't force yourself to read, War and Peace right now. The current book that's on my desk is called My Father's Paradise, A Son's Search for His Jewish Past in Kurdish Iraq. And it's really interesting. It's a memoir, and there's a couple of different levels to it, right? There's the search for the father's past and the lost past that was back in Iraq, but the son is reconnecting with his dad. They were very estranged. His son wanted to be, cool and hip and a Californian, and his dad had one foot in a very almost ancient kind of lifestyle. So as they go back together and search out the father's past, the son and the dad begin to find a way to bond. Not surprising, I think why I like this book right now, it's about connecting. And on some level, that's what people do. They look to connect. Even if you don't have the patience for a book right now, if you are thinking about career change, find your way into the trade magazines that the industries that you like read, people in those industries, so that at least during your downtime, to the extent you have it, if you want to move into the business world, pick up whatever your city's business magazine is. If you want to do something in the food and beverage industry, get a subscription or even an online subscription to some kind of hospitality magazines. It doesn't take a lot of time to flip through those, but you can test your interest in a particular area just by seeing if you like to read what those folks read for their profession. So it's a little free bite at the apple. And you may very well come up with not only names of jobs or potential titles for yourself. You may decide that, hey, this stuff is really fascinating, and I'm going to do some more digging. And that may be one of the areas that you decide you want to look into as an alternative.
I love that idea. I think trade magazines are very powerful. Cheryl, kind of in closing, let me ask this question as our last question. What are your superpowers, Sharon?
Wow. I think if I were to say that I had a superpower, I am super curious. I want to know everything about everything. Not in depth. Let me make that clear. I want to know a little about a lot. And you want to know, I always believe we're the same people we always were. Chris, you're just making me smile. As a little kid, I used to sit in the back of my parents' car and chatter. And every other question was, well, why is this? And what about this? Yeah. And if this, then what? And my father would look over. He'd be part bemused and part annoyed. And he'd say, what, are you writing a book? And even as a kid, I guess that was my latent superpower. It's always want to know more. And then, of course, to talk about it, I want to learn and I want to share. So, and no one has ever asked me that question before. That's cool.
Cheryl, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
It's been great. Chris, thanks for having me on. And if I can answer anybody else's questions, as you know, I like to chat. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you, everyone who listened to this episode of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. If you haven't already, please take a moment and subscribe. Also, we would love your feedback. You can leave feedback in 3 easy ways. You can go to the blog post on our website. You can click Give Feedback link in the show notes on your device. And then thirdly, you can text the phrase LFL podcast to the number 44222. That's LFL PODCAST. And thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. This podcast is for education purposes only. This content cannot be used for commercial use without written permission from the Lion Group. If you like this podcast, leave a review on iTunes.